When Adi Shankar's Devil May Cry was first announced, I was mad excited. I hadn't seen much of the DMC games, but I always loved the vibe and thought it was really cool to see something like DMC get adapted into animation. Again. Then we started getting some trailers, and some friends of mine started having their doubts. They were saying Dante was too quippy, that they don't love the animation or the tone, but I remained optimistic. I still thought it was going to be pretty cool, so I waited patiently, twiddling my thumbs in anticipation. Which is to say, I started watching Abbott Elementary and mostly forgot about it, but then it came out! So, of course, I watched it, and I had mixed feelings. So mixed, in fact, that I felt it was my sacred duty to talk about it, and give my opinion that nobody asked for. But there is something I want to address before we begin, and that's the director himself. Mind you, I called this Adi Shankar's DMC for a reason. This man is well known for his less than faithful adaptations of video games, specifically referring to his Castlevania series. Any hardcore fan would tell you that anime is not accurate to the story of the games, and that's certainly true in this case as well. I realized very early on that this was definitely not a Devil May Cry adaptation. It's more accurate to say it's a story loosely based in the Devil May Cry world, using its characters to weave its own narrative. This alone has led fans of the games, at least the ones I've seen, to write off the show as not worth watching. Almost every DMC fan I know who has seen this has stated it's an affront to the games, both in story and in tone. And that's where I come in. I have never played a Devil May Cry game. The best I've got is 3-year-old memories of watching a friend do a boss rush of sorts in DMC3. So I think that lends me a fairly unique perspective. The general consensus I've seen is that fans of the games don't particularly like this anime, and people who haven't played the games find it very enjoyable and fun. Though to be fair, I only know like 5 people who watch this shit. Regardless, I find myself in the middle, as someone who hasn't played the games and doesn't really like the show. So, join me as we dive into Devil May Cry and find out if this show does the name justice. Our first episode begins with the silliest guard costumes I have ever seen, as well as a heist. These 4 mercs break into, I guess, the Vatican, attempting to steal priceless Catholic artifacts. This is where the Rabbit, our main antagonist, makes his first appearance.
Then again, hell, as you call it, has always been the true heart of human religion.
Well, not all human religion centers around life after death, but go off, little rabbit boy, talk your shit. The rabbit steals the big demon sword, kills the mercs inside, and takes his leave. Very subtly, might I add. Master of stealth, this one. We move our focus over to New York, where we are introduced to Dante, and what he does best. Dante kills the demons, but fails to kill the shapeshifter posing as a baby. The mother and demon get away, leading us to this sick-ass opening! I wish the whole show looked this good! The vibes are simply immaculate, I love it! We come back from that lovely sequence to reports on the Vatican attack. The show really likes to bring in some base-level political talk. It happens a couple times throughout the show, and it's never particularly captivating or thought-provoking. For example, this is their US president. My man Dr. Fisher here explains the biology of demons, explaining that they come from a world similar to ours, with close enough DNA to ours to be in the same talking sphere.
Mythology exists to explain reality. Why do you think every culture on Earth tells the same stories about demons and the underworld?
Again, not all. Feels kind of reductive to speak of hundreds of different cultures and lump them all into saying the same thing. Regardless, this conversation introduces us to DarkCom, a special ops group specifically created to kill demons, and they're tasked with finding every bounty hunter they could find. And what is our favorite bounty hunter up to? The run back, that's what! Sadly though, this scene doesn't really add much other than something to cut to while Fisher and Vice President Kevin Conroy track down Dante. It does, however, tip Dante off to the shapeshifter really wanting Dante's necklace. We learn through our local short, shady sleazeball Enzo the story of Sparta, and how he used the power of a sword and a magic amulet to turn against his people and separate the demon world and ours. We learn from Enzo and Anders, the one soldier who survived a Darkon raid on the rabbit, that he already knows Dante holds the other piece of the amulet he needs to open the rift between worlds. Dante better watch out, cause everyone's gonna be swarming in on him soon. Yeah, this tracks. Also, damn, how'd he get a D? I couldn't do half of the shit he was pulling. As far as first episodes go, this is pretty fair. Does a decent job setting up the plot and introducing our main character and antagonist, as well as most members of the supporting cast. I do think the action scenes are generally pretty bland, though, aside from the occasional video game bullshit, which is a good thing. Nothing to love, but nothing to hate either. Generally fun. Episode 2 picks up where Vice President Kevin Conroy left off. Darkcom has successfully gathered an immense amount of bounty hunters, and they're all briefed on their mission: capture Dante and his necklace. It's here that we also meet Darkcom's elite ops: Cat, Mask, Visor Scouter, and Lady. I say Lady because that's what Dante calls her. I don't use anyone else's names because I could not tell you what they are if you put a gun to my head. Enzo visits Dante's place to try and stall him, and or convince Dante to just give him the necklace so he doesn't get killed. It's here where Dante reveals where he got the necklace from: his deceased mother. Since it's the last thing of hers that he owns, he won't let anyone take it. At least not without a fight. The fight in question is the best one in the show. It's not only actually funny, but it shows us Dante's personality at its most infectious. The action itself is genuinely really fun to follow, and it's got Rage Against the Machine in the back. It's everything you could ask for in a Devil May Cry fight. It absolutely rules. In cutaways from the fight scene, Lady uses her immaculate vocabulary to explain to us the story of Sparta. Her own account of it shows us how much disdain she holds for demons. She truly feels all of them are evil and worth killing. After explaining this to us, Lady gets tired of watching goons fail to bring in Dante, so she jumps into the fray, and almost immediately takes in the necklace. The Lady v Dante fight isn't as good as the goon fight, but it serves more purpose. Dante and Lady meet for the first time, and their dynamic is established. It also serves as Dante learning from Lady that he's a half-demon, a hybrid, although he doesn't want to believe it. The fight and episode ends with Dante getting captured by Darkcom, and I'm left pretty satisfied. I have to question a little bit how Lady is so unbelievably competent, especially in comparison to the rest of her team, but things are revealed later in the show that help it make a little more sense. This is probably my favorite episode of the show. It's almost entirely just good action and fairly good bits. Kinda what you'd want out of a Devil May Cry adaptation. This is the kind of shit I was hoping for. Episode 3 begins with a peek into Lady's past. When she was a child, she was obsessed with the idea of hunting demons. To a frankly concerning degree, that kid wanted blood. So much so, in fact, she stares down a demon jumping at her with her toy gun. No idea why she thought that would work. This encounter frankly shatters Lady's family. The police don't believe them, and Lady's father goes far off the deep end trying to find a way to kill demons. We don't see the consequences of this yet, but we do see how much this encounter means for Lady. She seems to take to heart her father's ramblings more than her mother's pleading to actually return to their family and life, which I find believable, but still concerning. Enough about Lady, though. The theme song just ended, and we're back in the present. We not only confirm Fisher's theories regarding Dante's necklace, we also get a very interesting contrast between Lady and Anders. Her seething hatred for all demons against Anders' desire to just get home to his family is very interesting. I hope this gets expanded on. In the meantime, mass destruction! The rabbit rears its ugly ears and brings with him a new posse of various bosses from Devil May Cry, who are certainly animated. While Lady somehow holds off 5 notable demons, the rabbit finds Anders and Fisher, who... Oh. Well, that's disappointing. Not only did this feel like an unnecessary betrayal, it also took away the chance we had to see that dynamic between Anders and Lady develop. I doubt Lady would want to hear his perspective upon finding out he double-crossed all of humanity. Quite the shame. Almost as much a shame as Dr. Fisher dying. The rabbit and posse get away with the amulet, and Dante, now freed thanks to Anders, speeds off to stop them. This fight scene is two-sided. It has some pretty good parts, but the back and forth between CG and 2D kind of takes you out of the action. The intro songs are also getting pretty obnoxious at this point. Even if it was well used, I am kind of getting tired of hearing a new one every episode. This one was okay. I was relatively engaged because there was a fair amount of plot progression and alluding to character growth, but it was also fairly boring. Nothing really stuck out. In the aftermath of the rabbit's highway robbery, Darkon prepares to follow in pursuit of his hideout. Little do they know, their ranks have already been infiltrated. Hey Goat, is this demon typing thing something in the games, or is it show exclusive?
I've been awake for 24 hours, and at this point, I don't care.
Sick. Dante, meanwhile, has found himself in a hostage situation, along with Enzo, Vice President Kevin Conroy, and various nameless citizens. The rabbit has hijacked a US plane, trapping all of these people in it to force Dante to save them from whatever peril he has planned. While this is happening, Lady's team arrives at the rabbit's hideout. The rabbit traps them inside, telling the implied residents of this building to basically try and kill the demon hunters or they'll be killed themselves. And while these residents don't show their faces, 2 of the Type 4 demons we saw on the highway do. And they... You know, personally, I thought they would have lasted longer. Considering how Lady was able to hold her own against 5 of them... See, this is why I didn't bother learning their names. They all die so fast. Anyway, we cut back to the plane, where the rabbit tells the passengers that there are explosives set everywhere, and it will be up to Dante to unlock his devil trigger and save them. Otherwise, they'll all perish. He also lets his persona slip a little, telling Dante how enraged he is by Sparta. He thinks him nothing but a coward, trapping demons in their own world while he gets to be praised by the humans. This is the first time we not only see the rabbit's perspective on the prolific Sparta, but also the first time the idea of demons being actual people is brought to us. The rabbit's passion is on full display here. With this, along with some goading from D and Dumb, Dante breaks his chains and prepares to fight. We'll see how this fight goes later, as we have Lady and her traumas to unpack. See, she was hit by some purple gas earlier, and now she's having visions of her dead team, as well as her father, alluding to something we may see in the future. This is the first time we actually see Lady scared, showing genuine fear of what's in front of her. Eventually, visions become reality, and Lady is forced to hide from in the closet of a very kind stranger. Lady is shocked, however, to find out the stranger is a demon. And after the demon leaves, this family explains to her that they're here because the demon world, Makai, is actually incredibly dangerous and inhospitable to most demons, and they needed to leave in order to keep their young safe. The rabbit apparently found a way out. In offering passage from Makai to Earth, these demons, or now Makaians I guess, are forced to live in this building because they don't feel safe outside. Because of people like Lady, they aren't able to live among humans in society. This story makes her reevaluate her own worldview a bit. Lady leaves their home, vowing to get them back up and keep the family safe. Meanwhile, Dante almost fucking loses against D and Dumb over here, which is wild. He was 1v4ing them easy on the highway, and now all of a sudden they're able to almost kill him. However, Dante looks over at who I think is the only woman on the plane who just so happens to look like Dante's mother. This gives him the emotional surge he needs to activate his devil trigger, killing Dumb. D, seeing this, immediately blows up the plane, sending Dante and everyone else falling thousands of feet in the air. Watching this episode made me realize I don't really care about anyone in this show except for sometimes Dante. This episode introduces a lot, mainly putting the racism and immigration allegories in the forefront of the show. I don't think it's very good, and I will speak on it more later. But this episode generally does not impress me, especially the very inconsistent power scaling of these characters. However, this is one of the best things in this show. Thank you, Johnny Young Bosch, you legend. After a quick reminder of where we last left off with Dante, we follow Lady as she works her way around the demons trying to hunt her. She finds some of the experiments the White Rabbit had been doing on certain Makaians, which further pushes her towards the idea that not all of them are scum. She runs into her demon-disguised subordinate, and after a little bit of cathartic corpse culling, resolves to get to the top of the building where the amulet resides. This leads to a somewhat questionable series of events where Lady is able to trick the shapeshifter into disguising himself as her, tricking Plant Lady into killing him, giving Lady the chance to kill her. I still question how strong or weak these characters are at any given time, and how all it took was the element of surprise to ice off our potted mini-boss. Ooh, and she got that good-ass Signalis splooge. Let's go! Where my Signalis fans at? Y'all got a least favorite puzzle in that game? I do, it's all of them. Now on the top floor, Lady is able to send a message to the whole building and her team, telling them this is now a rescue mission only, and they're now tasked with saving any refugees inside. While Lady has been finishing her character arc, Dante has been out here having the time of his life! Saving people falling from a fucking building in this cool-ass set piece, activating this devil trigger and shit! It's a really good action scene. This is the first time Dante does this fully in the show. We've been building up to it for so long, and it's kind of underwhelming. The fight with him and D is not particularly engaging, mostly due to the mediocre CG. The stuff with the plane was much more interesting and cool. The fight does end, however, with our two viewpoint characters finally meeting again. They have a quick bit of banter, and Lady shoots a table.
Sick motherfucker.
The back and forth between Lady, Dante, and the rabbit here is honestly pretty engaging. It's kind of the best example of all of their clashing personalities coming together to not only give us some fun dialogue, but also move the plot forward. Said plot being, Dante's blood is needed to activate the breach of the wall between worlds. While this is happening, VPKC directly orders all soldiers under Lady to kill all of the Makaians they were initially going to save. The shapeshifter, who is somehow alive at this point, sees this and responds by blowing up the entire building with all of the explosives the rabbit had hidden everywhere in the building at all times. Dante and Lady barely make it out, and VPKC watches from above, with not so much as a drop of remorse. This is probably one of the better episodes of the show. I really like Dante saving everyone from the plane, specifically before the Devil Trigger, and Lady's arc seems to finish up in a short and succinct way. And as I said before, the banter between Dante and Lady and the rabbit is some of the better written parts of the show. There are definitely some of the same issues I've touched on before, such as the power scaling and some of the fight scenes not really being all that, as well as some character stuff that we'll get into in the post-analysis. Overall, a better experience than some other episodes. This is the most important episode of the show. You can tell because they put another art style in it. We finally return to Lady's past, where she is Girl. She is trying to live happily, but is concerned for her father, who continues to throw himself into his experiments. How he's able to get all of these demon body parts is beyond my understanding. We also follow this mysterious young boy, who has been adopted into this incredibly abusive household. One night, reading his thematically unrelated Alice in Wonderland, some mysterious portal opens nearby. This boy is able to take a step into a new world, just as Girl is unable to confront her father, tearing her family apart. Boy and Girl's stories parallel each other throughout the episode. They both live their own equivalent of happy in their respective environments, while a coming tragedy looms over them. At around the same time in their lives, Boy experiences the loss of the equivalent of his little sister, while Girl watches the culmination of her father's experiments. He injects himself with something, turning himself into some kind of vampiric creature, feasting upon his wife, almost killing Girl, and then burning to death. This is the moment where whatever happiness they could have had in life seemingly burns away. Boy especially shows this by burning his thematically unrelated Alice in Wonderland. Years later, Girl, now Lady, and Boy, now Guy, have thrown themselves into their purposes. Guy has been able to make a prototype portal opener to bring his family back to Earth, whilst Lady has begun her journey at Darkcom. Things are good. For a time. Guy is helping his people and having food and a place to live, while Lady is out killing various... not humans. We haven't seen any design like this. Their stories eventually collide. Lady and her team finds the hideout of Guy and Co., while Guy is attempting to get more Makaians to safety from a monster in that realm. His portal opens to find them all being held at gunpoint. A dialogue almost occurs, but that monster from Makai comes through the portal. Darkcom sees this as enough of a reason to brutally murder all of the evacuated Makaians in the safe house, blowing up the entire building to kill the monster as well as everyone inside. Miraculously, Guy is the only survivor, and this last trauma is what pushes him over the edge. Or rather, pushes him down the rabbit hole. I honestly have many questions about this backstory. I don't understand why Lady would act as if she didn't have anything left to bring her joy in the world after her family was torn apart. I also don't understand exactly how the rabbit throws himself into this demented and insane scheme after his first attempt at immigrating Makaians fails, or how he ended up becoming as powerful as he does. Lady at least had training, and even then, I find her level of skill very questionable. I have more things to say, but that'll go into the post-analysis. It's very clear what they were trying to do in this episode, and it, at the very least, kept me kind of engaged. The different art styles throughout this episode really helped in that regard, but there are too many little things for me to call it well executed. rabbit returns to Makai, and after a cute discussion with some mysterious someone, he has all the pieces he needs to join the worlds together. All but one. Dante is all for going to the rabbit to finish this himself, but Lady is determined to make that not happen, and goes to fight the rabbit and his army alone. Dante eventually arrives on the scene and has a real conversation with the rabbit. Mostly stuff we've heard before, although Dante does finally take his first steps into the demon world. The rabbit tries to convince Dante to hand over his blood willingly, so that he may be able to bring their worlds together and save Makaians without killing Dante, I guess is his goal. Either that or just hoping to make the job a little easier. This, surprisingly, does not work. In between different cuts of this fight scene, the rabbit finally reveals his identity of Guy to Lady, and right before he's about to kill her, Dante is able to finish up the fight and absolutely fucking deck the rabbit, sending him falling into the ocean. Guess he wasn't that strong after all.
What the hell happened here?
Our first strike in the Holy War.
No. No, it wasn't. That could be the building that got blown up, or the airplane that got blown up, or the highway that got blown up, or the Vatican that got blown up, which is what kicked off this whole plot. We've had like 4 strikes before this, VPKC. Since this is basically the first half of the 2-part finale, there isn't much to say about the episode on its own that won't go into the post-analysis. So, I'll just give you a quote my buddy said while I finished watching this with him.
Man, this really does feel like DMC written in the most generic way possible.
This was the first episode he saw. I wish I had any possible way of understanding why the rabbit does this, or how exactly it works. We're kind of just expected to let the show do what it wants with how demon blood interacts with humans, which, as I understand, isn't too far off from how DMC operates in the games. So I guess I can't be too mad. Also, what was the rabbit's plan if Bloodstrike wasn't alive still? I guess he would have died. I guess he would have just fucking died.
How do you think all those bodies stay hidden from the public?
Well, I doubt they do, considering how your father was able to get his hands on enough of it to turn himself into some vampire thing. Also, what good does hiding the bodies do if people are still getting attacked by them on enough of a frequent basis that there are dozens of demon hunters for hire? Like, sure, they were bounty hunters, but it's not like they were phased. But enough of wondering why Enzo is here. The rabbit has turned into the monster, and we've got ourselves a final boss. And Enzo is no longer here. About half of this episode is this fight, and throughout it, I keep having to ask myself why it is that Lady is able to live through all of these things. Like, she jumps out of a crashing helicopter on her side with no parachute or nothing, and then it explodes and she's just laying there like she has a tummy ache. This I truly do not understand. Soon after, the monster is finally able to achieve his goal, and the demon and human worlds are reunited. This does not last long, though, since Lady is able to make the one shot she needs to help Dante finish off the monster. Dante, now devilishly triggered, turns off the Sword of Sparta, and this causes all the demons to Thanos away, I guess. Don't understand why they wouldn't just stay there. If they went through the portal, that means they've gone through the portal. All of their demons and humans have been able to go between realms without disintegrating when that portal closes. So that don't make one lick of sense. And neither does this, in the eyes of many. Lady finds yet another way to sedate Dante, all while VPKC throws Anders off a helicopter and uses the rabbit's device to open a portal between worlds. He sends missiles out to kill and enslave only Makaians as we see it, Dante gets put on ice, and detention facilities and mines get erected, all under American Idiot by Green Day. And also Virgil is there. Can you tell how tired I was by the end of these last 2 episodes? I was out of it, dude. And, that's the show. But we're not done yet. See, there are a few topics that I want to discuss in depth. Animation/fight scenes, character writing, and theming. We'll be going in that order, so let's get into the post-analysis. The Devil May Cry anime adaptation was done by Mir Studios, well known for their work on Voltron Legendary Defender, Kipo and the Age of the Wonder Beasts, and X-Men 97. I would say their work on DMC is a little bland. For a series like Devil May Cry, where so much of the supposed enjoyment is the spectacle, creativity, and the style, which I've heard is supposed to be smoking and sexy, this muted, gray coloring and pseudo-realistic human facial structure doesn't really hit the way it could have. The humans in this show feel so normal, so standard in a way. And the demon designs themselves aren't bad, but most of the rabbit's posse is just straight up taken from some of the games. In the 2D art style, they often look as bland as the humans, and when they're not in the 2D style, it's in okay CGI. That CGI also usually doesn't help with the fight scenes, especially that one between Tweedledee and Devil Trigger Dante. It's one of the most boring in the show. If I were to give one word to describe the fights in this show, it would be inconsistent. There are some honestly very good fight scenes. Some of the stuff in episodes 2 and 3 are highly entertaining, but there are some others, a lot of ladies fights for example, that just don't really hit the mark. I find the best action scenes in the show come when there's a secondary goal or motivation underneath. Dante attempting to not kill the bounty hunters or Darkcom soldiers leads to some much more creative choreography, while also putting Dante's personality on full display. Same with him saving the falling passengers from that plane. There's more to the action than just punching people, and this is where the animation really shines. That and the intro scene. I stand by the idea that the show would have been so much more visually interesting if it was modeled more like the opening theme. It has a much more distinct style and the colors are so eye-catching, it grips you immediately and won't let go. Obviously, that's the point of an anime opening, to hook you in, so it's a bit head-assed of me to ask that the show looked like that the whole time, but I still think it would have been more interesting. I find it very easy to get bored looking at this show. And while it does have its moments, they are often few and far between. Rather than go through a discussion on how the character writing is in this show as a whole, I'm going to go through each character I find notable enough to touch on and give a quick little analysis on them. We're going to start down and work our way up based on relevance. Yes, they have names. No, I will not tell them to you. They don't matter. These guys are very bland and uninteresting. They serve as walking corpses to die at the hands of the demons and give Lady something to theoretically care about losing. This doesn't really last very long though, since Lady barely even mentions them after they die and barely even grieves after she shakes off that hallucinogenic. They don't have enough individual personality to be analyzed by themselves, which is why they're in one group. I don't like them. Write characters next time, please. Their personalities are very one-note, but that's mostly fine. They don't really matter. They do come with some weird implications, though. I'm not sure if the implication is that these heavy-hitting demons are the only, 4 or 5 of their kind, or if there are tons more like them. Regardless, their existence kind of takes away from the racism allegory the show is trying to push forward. When you have these big demons and say that the same race is these much more human-like entities that have no powers at all, it makes me take your point less seriously. It also gives the humans any more of an understandable justification for fear. Black people don't have fire or wind powers. Latinos can't shoot poison darts out of their bodies. When the demons try to spout pride for Makai or give off the vague idea that they're doing this for their people, it kind of falls flat. Especially if there are more like them, because some of them should have at least tried to kill these giant big monsters that terrorize the weaker Makaians. There are too many questions attached to these guys that end up making them feel wholly ineffective for the story, and leave me with too many questions I don't think they were ever meant to answer. I put these two together because I don't have enough to say about Fisher to give him his own segment. Fisher purely serves as exposition, as a way to push the plot along in the first few episodes and give the audience the information they need to follow along with the plot. And then he dies. All he does is talk, and since he isn't particularly interesting, his exposition dumps are a real slog to get through. Anders, on the other hand, had more potential in this show than any other character. His introduction as a survivor of the Rabbit's first attack works as a way to parallel with Lady, as they're both characters who have survived tragedy. But while Lady went on to become an emotionally stunted soldier, hell-bent on revenge and genocide, Anders was still able to keep his smile. He still had something to fight for. And I thought that perspective would work very well to help Lady become a better person. Sadly, Anders is written out of basically half of this show, and he only comes back towards the end to give VPKC the means to enter the demon world. His work as the mole for the Rabbit also kinda took away from my idea, since it keeps Anders away from Lady for most of the show. Anders could have been a fairly good side character, but the show had different plans for him. Plans that I think were much less interesting. Enzo is pretty mediocre comic relief. This small, loud-mouthed potato man doesn't really add much, aside from some off-and-on okay dialogue with Dante. Sometimes he's funny, but sometimes his voice can just get so grating. I also think his sacrifice at the end of the show is pretty preventable and wholly unneeded. Like, there was no reason for him to have shown up at the rooftop towards the end. And while it is pretty sweet that he would put himself in harm's way for Dante, I do still think it wasn't all that emotionally poignant. Overall, Enzo is okay. He takes up the space he needs to take up. Vice President Kevin Conroy is probably the least interesting prominent character in the show. He serves as the head representative of religious rhetoric being used as a flimsy way to justify one's own awful actions, and he does a fair enough job doing that. And Kevin Conroy is absolutely doing a great job, as always. It was mad surprising hearing his voice in 2025. But all of his speeches about doing the Lord's work and things of that nature are all incredibly basic. They all kind of go in the exact same way you'd expect them to, as a main antagonist. He's also the last major obstacle standing in the way of Lady fully progressing in her character arc and freeing herself from his influence. I would bet everything we're almost certainly going to see this in the second season, and a bunch of stuff is definitely going to come to light regarding their relationship. Like, they're gonna have to make it a big reveal for Lady that he was the one who killed all those refugees at the abandoned building, right? Like, we're gonna have to follow up on that. But for now, their relationship is kind of what it needs to be. We'll see if it gets developed in an interesting way come season 2, but as it stands, I really just don't care about him. Now, you may be surprised to see Dante not at the top, since he's the main character and all, and that is true, absolutely. You are not a fool for saying that. But I do believe that Dante is not the character the story cares about the most. And I can kind of see why. From the snippets I've seen of him, Dante has always felt like the kind of character you would struggle a little bit with writing an actual story around. He seems like a very irreverent person, the kind of character that wouldn't really push a plot forward without being provoked. Like, his purpose has always seemed to be cool. To be the tall, hot guy with a big sword and big guns to watch kill things. But this show is, at least to some degree, trying to be about something. It's not meant to be a show just about a hot guy showing off his smokin' sexy style for 8 episodes. As such, they did a lot of different things with Dante. A lot of emphasis is put on his emotional state throughout the show and how he actually grapples with the idea that he's half demon. Pretty much all of his actual emotional dialogue centers around his mother and brother supposedly being killed by demons. He becomes a demon hunter for hire because of this, and also resents demons, much like Darkcom, although much more passively. He never really works through the trauma of seeing his family die, and a lot of his actions are motivated by him feeling that grief and attempting to overcome it. I imagine that's why they tied his devil trigger to his emotions. Or at least one of the reasons. Secondly, to also not let him just do it anytime he wants to win a fight. But regardless, his devil trigger is only activated twice in the show, and both times he's being confronted with loss or grief in some way or another. My main issue comes with Dante's relationship with the themes of the show. He may be our main character, but the story the show is trying to tell only really needs him to be a MacGuffin for the rabbit, and to be the tall hot guy with a big sword and big guns. Dante is more like a tool the story works with, rather than a character they legitimately cared about and wanted to tell a story for. Despite that though, he's entertaining enough for me to actually care about him. A lot of credit goes to Johnny Young Bosch's performance, I'm not gonna lie. He does such a great job oozing charisma and charm into the character, and I'm really glad he was chosen for the role. By the end of it all, Dante was the only character I actually cared about and liked watching. Lady is the character we probably spend the most amount of time with in the show. She's at least about tied with Dante. Her rage against all demons is tied to her past, where her whole life fell apart because of one demon encounter. Her father turns himself into some sort of vampire creature somehow. He kills his wife, almost kills Lady, and then burns in the wreckage of their home. This motivates her to seek retribution against all demons that may come to Earth. I think that there are many holes in her backstory. For one, it's explained by VPKC that she has no human attachments, that she has no one she really cares about, and this makes her a very effective soldier. And she is a very effective soldier, to an unbelievable degree. My problem is the has no human attachments part. In the 6th episode, most of her happy moments are not spent with her family after the demon attack, but rather spent away from her family with this glasses boy she used to know. We have no idea who this kid is, but we see Lady spend more time with this kid in her childhood than with her family. Clearly these two are very good childhood friends, so it kind of surprises me that this kid and his family didn't do anything to help her adjust after she lost everything. They don't explain what happened to him, or why we never see him again. So a lot of the idea of Lady's I don't care about anyone and that defines a lot of my worldview and character doesn't make much sense to me when we get no explanation for why this clearly important part of her childhood is just never addressed. It also doesn't make much sense to me why she blames demons for her family falling apart, when it was her father's obsession with them that caused the issue. He tore their family apart, and they were never attacked again after that fateful night down Crime Subway. If anything, it's his fault all of that trauma happened. But a lot of her characterization is still based on this idea regardless. It kind of feels like she was just immediately plucked from this moment in her childhood to being recruited for Darkcom, when she definitely had at least a full decade to process her trauma. She doesn't really have a desire for justice as much as she has a desire for revenge. And maybe the whole point of Lady is that she needs to re-examine her trauma in order to overcome it and realize how misguided her hatred of demons was, but we don't get any of that in this season, so at this point I'm just speculating. Even so, she still gets far enough on her own to realize that demons are people too, and makes an effort to make sure they're saved. Which is good, her arc seemed complete. But by the end of the show, she backpedals on this and takes Dante in. I think this means that she just trusts VPKC right now more than Dante. Not exactly that she still thinks demons aren't people. But again, We don't get to see her see the consequences of putting Dante away and colonizing Makai. We never see her again after this moment, but beyond her choices, Lady herself is still a pretty annoying character. Her dialogue is very basic and aggressive in a way that just isn't fun to watch, except for a few scenes and when she's bouncing off with Dante. The dynamic is occasionally entertaining. I mainly just think Lady is a frustrating character. She is one of the most important for pushing the show's themes and has the longest spanning emotional growth throughout the show. But a lot of it falls apart with re-examining her backstory in contrast to how she's presented. I don't care much for her arc or her personality. The rabbit is an original character written for this show, and while this is practically true for Lady, since Game Her and Show Her are completely different people, the rabbit has no video game counterpart. So even if I were examining the differences between game and show, I wouldn't have anything to go off of. The rabbit is very good at getting your attention. This much is undeniable. He has a very unique design, a suave voice, and is by far the most expressive character in this show. For the most part. This has apparently gotten him some fans. The only stuff online I've seen of this show without looking for it is art of the rabbit, so this show definitely scratched that itch for some people. But to me, he is filled with contradictions. Really makes me question the show, probably more than any other character. I have similar problems with his backstory to Lady's. For one, his orphan portions of the story are so quick and overly dramatic, I have some trouble taking it seriously. Not that this kind of stuff hasn't happened before. I imagine many children have suffered from situations similar to his. But it's so quick and over the top that it just feels like it's going through the motions. I also don't fully understand a lot of shifts in the rabbit's character. After seeing so much death and destruction dealt toward the Makaians, he dedicates his immense intellect to saving as many as he can, sending them to Earth. And this is very noble, he does this for a while. What I don't understand is why he just snaps after the Darkcom attack. Like, yes, this is very traumatic, everything he was working towards perished in a day. But he's been living in the bad air hell dimension with giant monsters for years. I feel like he's had to have had many traumatic experiences and failures before. He just goes so far off the deep end, not only stitching his face to a giant rabbit costume, but also shifting his focus towards brutal and unethical experimentation on the very race he was trying to save. The way he treats the refugees inside his building baffles me. But with all the talk he and his followers give about doing all of this for the sake of their people, these people are living in fear, and the rabbit barely seems concerned with helping them. And I suppose evidence is given to the idea that after the accident he barely even cared about the Makaians anymore, and just wanted revenge on Darkcom, but he only really gets involved with them because they start interfering with his plans and has stuff that he wants. All of the rabbit's actions point towards his goal of merging the two worlds, and his motivation for that is ensuring the safety of Makaians. The rabbit feels like the kind of villain to be seen as, well, yeah, he did a lot of bad stuff, but he kinda had a point, you know? The kind of villain that was a little right. And to some degree, this is true. Yes, racism is bad. I agree. But I have difficulty giving the rabbit much credit when he shoots himself in the foot with all of the awful things he does after his backstory to achieve his goals. Which the show does point out, and at this point I'm basically just echoing Lady's sentiments. But I'm not going to give the rabbit grace when so much of what he does makes so little sense. As a villain, he pushes the themes of the show farther than everyone else. He is a flimsy mirror to Dante and a foil for Lady, which says a lot about this show's priorities. Any ideals the show wants me to take to heart because of him fall flat due to his inconsistency, and he looks much better with the mask on. The last major topic I want to discuss for this video is DMC 2025's theming. Or at least, one of its themes. I've been sprinkling my thoughts on it throughout the video, but I want to explicitly speak on how I feel about this show's themes of racism and immigration. Demons in this world are meant to be taken as an allegory for racism. The rabbit spent most of his life inside their world and came to find out that they live just as awful lives as he did when he was younger, if not worse. But they took him in, treated him as one of their own. So he tries to bring them back to Earth, where he thinks they'll be safer. He is repeatedly proven wrong in this belief. All of the humans on Earth treat demons as if their only reason for living is to invade their homes and kill them. The show very clearly sets this up, and there are many problems with its execution. For one, what is considered a Makayan in this show is very loose. A green and teal little child and a giant all-black horned demon with a big plasma sword are considered to be the same race. And while their features are still different enough that you can tell them apart from humans, the Makayans that are often seen being oppressed look much more human-like than other demons that we see in the show. Every time we hear a story of a demon accidentally entering the human world, we're greeted with some grotesque beast that doesn't want to talk, barely looks like a humanoid, and is only interested in attacking humans. We never see a single example of some human by chance encountering a demon that just wants to hang out, eat a burger or something. All humans ever see of the Makayan race are these monstrous beasts that fit the exact description and stereotype they've been pushing the whole show. The rabbit's whole motivation is centered around saving these people, and when he finally opens the portal and the worlds collide, we never see a more human-looking Makayan. All we see are these giant monsters coming into existence to terrorize humanity. And by the end of the show, when America invades the Makayan world under American Idiot by Green Day, we only see the more human-looking ones. This show is incredibly inconsistent with when it wants to push its themes. At the very least, they could have shown these two different kinds of their race interacting. Maybe we could have seen Plant Lady or Horn Demon in the past trying to help some of the more human-looking Makayans. Maybe trying to fight against those giant monsters that are also there. But these two sides don't collide nearly enough. They practically don't, period. Racism is discrimination based on nothing real. Bigots have been trying for centuries to come up with ways to justify their beliefs, both scientific, religious, and any other idea they can scramble for. But there will never be a real justification. We are all human. We are all worthy of respect and should be treated the same. Not that it would matter, but none of us are drastically different from one another on a biological level. And this is the issue that so many stories trying to write a racism allegory fall into. They try to make a humans and monsters, humans and orcs, humans and animal people, or something like that, and try to tell the same message and same ideals. And a fundamental problem with those allegories is that there is a genetic difference. There are so many differences between the two species. Demons in Devil May Cry can just have practically the same physiological makeup that humans do, but they can also be these giant plant ladies that have poison shooting out of them, or a shapeshifter that can take the form of whatever it wants and lift a truck, or these literal orcs with fire and wind powers, or be whatever the hell Sparta is. Even with the inconsistency of the racism theme in this show, and how fast and loose it wants to keep it present and around in the story, from the moment Adi Shankar decided he wanted to make a racism plot between humans and monsters, he already shot himself in the foot. One of the biggest issues I've found throughout my analysis is that Devil May Cry 2025 is always trying to have its cake and eat it too. It never goes full hog in one direction, never fully commits to one idea. It doesn't commit to actually trying to tell a story about racism and immigration, or just be a show about killing demons. It's inconsistent with its character motivations. It doesn't stick with one animation style. Because of this, I left the show feeling very dissatisfied. I felt like I didn't get what I signed up for. I was hoping for a show with a unique style and some kick-ass action, and I got that sometimes. But I wasn't really impressed with what I got in between those moments. So, I really didn't like Devil May Cry. But I am only one person. While I haven't seen much from people that watch this show, what I have seen is pretty positive on the side of people who haven't played a DMC game before. I heard a couple people saying they wanted to try playing the games after watching this show, that this inspired them to give DMC a shot. I said it at the very beginning, this show is not trying to be an adaptation of the games. But regardless of that fact, a part of its job is to get people interested. And it did succeed at this, at least to some small degree. Hell, even I'm going to play these games when I'm done with the video. I've been waiting until I was done to check it out. I've always had a passive interest, but this show did invade my brain enough to get me wanting to try. So, did I like this show? No, almost not at all. It makes my blood boil. But I cannot sincerely call it a complete failure, and I guess that's worth something. Hey ladies, hey fellas, and the people who don't give a fuck, all the lovers, all the haters, and all the people who call themselves players, hot mamas, them daddies, and the people rolling up in caddies, hey rockers, hip hoppers, and everybody all around the world. Breathe in, now breathe out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Breathe in, now breathe out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Breathe in, now breathe out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Breathe in, now breathe out. Hands up, now hands down. Back up, back up, back up, back up, back up. Keep rolling, 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 rolling. 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 Keep rolling, rolling.